Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone here today for our first council meeting of August. I'd also like to welcome everybody watching at home on our Electric City Television. Our mayor, Terrence Roberts, is on vacation this week. As your mayor pro tem, I'll be presiding over the meeting. We have the invocation tonight by Councilmember Matt Harvin and respects to the flag by Councilmember John Roberts. Please rise. Mr. Mayor pro tem, if I could, I'd like to have a moment of silence for Captain Kenny Caldwell, his family, his city family, his friends, for his 39 years of service. Let us pray. Thank you for letting us live in a free country. I pray for the military protecting their freedom and their safety. I pray for our police and our firefighters for their safety protecting our citizens. I pray for our employees of the city, they would make decisions pleasing in your eyes. And I pray for this council, that we would represent our citizens and make decisions that would please you. In your name we pray. Amen. 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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have several special recognitions tonight, and I'd like to ask Chief Jim Stewart, please come down to lead that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and Council. This is the last of our promotions for this year. We're always very fortunate, and we like to share this publicly with our staff and the public. Those people will be taking those important leadership positions within our agency. First person I'd like to ask, Lieutenant Jasmine DeLuna, to come down. I'll tell you a little bit about Lieutenant DeLuna. She's been in the Anderson Police Department since 2011. She served in the Army National Guard since 2006. She received her criminal justice degree from Tri-County Tech, served as an intern at this agency. She also is the Field Training Officer of the Year and was the Police Officer of the Year. She was promoted to Corporal in 2016, Sergeant in 2017. Her new assignment will be Patrol Lieutenant on Charlie ship. Lieutenant DeLuna, you have somebody here you'd like to recognize tonight?
My other half, Brandon, my family, and my second family up there, Miss Rose and Brianna.
And I'd like to ask our Assistant Chief Carson come down. We'll swap out the bags. Okay, Lieutenant, if you would raise your right hand and repeat after me. I,
Jasmine DeLuna,
as a Lieutenant of the City of Anderson,
as a lieutenant of the city of Anderson,
will equally, fairly, and impartially,
will equally, fairly, and impartially,
to the best of my ability and skill,
to the best of my ability and skill,
exercise the trust reposed in me,
exercise the trust imposed in me,
and will use my best endeavors
and will use my best endeavors
to carry into effect,
and carry into effect,
according to law,
the
purpose for which I have been elected.
the purpose for which I have been elected.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. This time I'm going to ask the sergeant candidates to come down and join Lieutenant DeLuna. Sergeant Matt Anderson, if you would come down and join me. Sergeant Anderson has been with the Anderson City PD since 2012. He has his bachelor and master's degree in criminology from Appalachian State and is currently assigned to our CID, where he'll specialize in white-collar crime. Sergeant Anderson, you have someone you'd like to recognize?
Yes, sir. My wife, who is carrying what will be our first job together. Sarah.
Welcome. Sergeant Erskine, if you would come down and join me. Sergeant Erskine has been in law enforcement for 10 years. She's a graduate of Anderson University. She's currently the school resource officer at the Alternative School, and she will be currently assigned to Delta Shift as a patrol sergeant. And Sergeant Justin Ritchie, if you'll come join me. Sergeant Ritchie has been in law enforcement for 19 and a half years. Prior to being hired by the city, he worked for the Belton Police Department and the Anderson County Sheriff's Office. Ritchie was an officer in CID. He will be currently assigned to Alpha Shift as the patrol sergeant. Sergeant Ritchie, you have somebody here you'd like to recognize?
Yes, my wife and children are here.
Welcome. Sergeant Nick Williamson. Sergeant Williamson was hired with the APD in October of 2011. He's currently assigned to our Warrants Division and previously worked in our detention center, patrol, and as a school resource officer. Williamson holds certification at FTO, advanced SRO, first line supervision, and serves as a driving instructor for the Criminal Justice Academy. He will remain assigned to the Warrants Division and will serve as supervisor over all the school resource officers. And I'd like to ask Captain Akins and Captain Bracone and Major Carson to come back down to assist me with the swapping out of the badges for the sergeant. Now do the oath, if you'll all raise your right hand. I,
I, Matt Anderson.
Hi, Kirsty Anderson.
I, Nick Williamson,
I, Justin Ritchie.
as the sergeant of the city of Anderson,
as a sergeant of the city,
equally, fairly, and impartially,
will equally, fairly, and impartially,
to the best of my ability and skill,
to the best of my ability and skill,
exercise the trust reposed in me,
exercise the trust reposed,
will use my best endeavors,
will use my best endeavors
to preserve the peace,
to preserve the peace,
and carry into effect,
and carry into effect,
according to law,
according to law,
the purpose for which I've been elected.
the purpose for which I've been elected.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. 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 Congratulations, man.
High school girl the other day called me sir.
We'll give just a few minutes for them to exit out. Take the microphone. Next on the agenda, we have the approval of the minutes for July 22nd. You have those minutes in front of you. Are there any corrections or additions?
I move maybe a dog.
Got a first by Councilman Lockers. A second by Dr. Thompson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next on the agenda, we have one item of old business. We have request consideration of an ordinance to rezone 16.82 acres at the northern corner of Glenwood Avenue and Blakely Street from LI Light Industrial to R5 Single Family Residential. Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, this item was referred by the City Council to the Planning Commission and then reviewed by the Planning Commission. Their recommendation comes before you. Mr. Maurice McKenzie, the Planning Development Director, will present the background to you, and Mr. Andrew Strickland, the Assistant Manager, will provide our recommendation to you. Maurice?
The applicant proposes to rezone this property to R5, single-family residential. R5 single-family allows a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet. The applicant is proposing to develop a 62-lot subdivision on this site, and looking at the calculations of this, the lot size average a little larger than that minimum of 5,000 square feet, between 5,900 and 6,000 square feet is the average lot size of this proposed 62-lot subdivision. Currently, the property is zoned LI, Light Industrial, and LI, Light Industrial, does allow a variety of light manufacturing, it allows warehousing, it also allows retail, but it does not allow single-family residential. That's why we're here this evening. And surrounding this particular piece of property, we have a variety of zoning classifications around it. To the east and north, those are some residential developments. Those are some R10 single-family, which are 10,000 square foot lots. Just to the south of this development, across Glenwood Avenue, is a piece of property that's zoned PDD, Planned Development District. That's subdivision currently under construction, which is the Village of Glenwood. And actually, those lot sizes are comparable to what's being proposed here. Across Blakely Street, you have a piece of property that's zoned heavy industrial. And then just to the northwest of this site, you have NC, neighborhood commercial. So again, you see a variety of land uses, zoning classifications in this particular area. The applicant who is here tonight, he and his engineers here as well to answer any questions if you have any, but he's a developer. He's going to be installing the infrastructure, preparing the site for construction, and he's been working with a home builder to come in later and build all of the houses on this particular site. Now, as we've been going through this process over the past few weeks, a number of questions and concerns always appear. And as we went through the process, some of the concerns that we were wanting to get more information on, one was the environmental issues associated with this site. Years and years ago, this was actually a phosphate fertilizer facility, and there was some contamination on portions of the site. So we wanted to learn more about that. Also, there's been some concern about adequate off-street parking in subdivisions, particularly in subdivisions that are higher density, like this one with smaller lot sizes. So we wish to get more information about that, because we see now that with the smaller lots, people may use their garages for other purposes. They may use that for storage, and all of a sudden, people may park on the street. So we wanted to make sure that was not going to be an issue with ingress, egress for emergency vehicles and such. Another question we had, and it's been evolving throughout the process, and that's the provision of adequate landscaping and screening around this particular piece of property to minimize the development's impact on the surrounding neighborhood, and also for aesthetic purposes as well. So as for those items, as far as the environmental issues are concerned, the applicant did provide us a letter from the EPA, which gave it a clean bill of health. Actually, over the past year or so, contaminated soil was removed and clean backfill was placed on the site, and EPA, they did conclude their study earlier this year in February. So again, a clean bill of health on that. And as I mentioned before, parking, on-street parking and off-street parking is an issue. Right now, our zoning guidelines require you to have 2 off-street parking spaces per single family lot. Ideally, that makes sense, but a lot of times, like I said, people may not use their garage for parking. In situations like this, driveways may be short. people have more than 2 cars. They may have a boat. So sometimes those are issues as well. So that was a concern as we've been going through the process, we've been working with the applicant, and this came up at the planning commission meeting as well. And the applicant does plan on working to help alleviate this issue, maybe through homeowners association recommendations or other measures. So that's been ongoing as well. As far as the landscaping is concerned, this has been evolving. Initially, the subdivision plan showed scattered landscaping and screening around the property. After discussions with them through the planning commission process, this has been increased significantly. If you can see on the landscaping plan that has been submitted to you tonight, along the backside of the property, which is the northern piece of property, there's a good bit of natural vegetation that is to remain. And behind that, along the back property line, they're installing landscaping. And also along the eastern side of the property where you see single-family houses backing up to this proposed subdivision, those are houses on Snipes Street. And right now, they're proposing more landscaping there and also a 6-foot privacy fence along that eastern side of the property line. And then along Glenwood and on Bleckley, they are proposing landscaping along that in the likes of oaks, elms, maples, and different types of shrubs. As the city manager mentioned, the planning commission did consider this request last week. They did unanimously recommend approval of this. We had a few residents in attendance, and a couple did speak, and most of the questions and comments were related to drainage, and the engineer for the developer did address that. Some concerns regarding increased traffic, and also landscaping and screening that's shown on these plans. Who's going to maintain that? And again, the answer was the homeowners association. We do have a couple of people from the neighborhood as well, so they may wish to speak as well this evening. But that's it for the staff. If you have any questions for me, or again, Andrew is going to take over from here, and then we can turn it over to the applicant if you wish.
All right, well, first, before we do that, before we take questions here, I'd just like to ask, is there anybody in the audience who is for or against the subdivision? If there's anybody here who wants to speak in favor of it, please come to the front. Is there anybody who's against it? Anybody who just has general questions? Ma'am, please come up and state your name and give us your address.
Good evening. My name is Eleanor Ray Lowing. I reside at 1000 Glenwood Avenue, which is 2 houses and what used to be a cow pasture from the old fertilizer plant, for those of you who have been here around as long as I have. Maurice McKenzie has done a great job, thank you, Mr. McKenzie, about addressing the issues that we addressed during the planning and development, but there are a couple of things that I did want to ask you about. The plan development document that was referred to, I think, was used supposedly on the first development that was on the other side of Glenwood Avenue. Is there anything in that document, or are there any measures that can be put in place to make sure that, and I'm not doubting anybody's word about what's promised on paper, but buffers were promised over there that have not been put in, and vegetation, landscaping that is supposedly already to be done is not being done. And I don't know whether that's something the city can address, or if that's something that the HOA has to, but it's beginning to become, it's not right now, it's beginning to look like more of an eyesore than it is housing development like you see throughout other parts of the city. And I don't want to see that happen. Traffic, with 1,400 extra trips a day, there's not going to be a lot that we can do to control that traffic, but security-wise, if that's a state road, can the state highway department not assist in patrolling that road? And, or if they can't, what measures can we do to cut down on that amount of traffic. It's just, it has turned out from being able, we used to listen to the birds at night. Now all I hear all night is traffic, all 24/7. Snipe Street that runs parallel to me and Glenwood Avenue has become a thorough cut through, and it just is a speed track. They hit the accelerator on Glenwood Avenue, and they don't turn off until they get to West Wind or vice versa. And this includes the city buses, and I had addressed this with Mr. McKenzie, and I think he's looking into it. But my question is, since this is not a state road, could some type of bumper be put in there, or could a speed limit sign of 5 to 10 miles an hour or 15 at the most? We have children living on that street now, and a lot of pedestrians who walk their dogs or their children, you know, during the mornings and the afternoons. And it's gotten where it's dangerous for me to walk my dog, let alone to have 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds who chase balls out into the street. So if there's something that can be done to address that, I would appreciate it. I have a question about access to that road or exit on and off of Glenwood from those housing developments. Exits and entrances are going to be right across from each other, so everybody's going to be coming out at the same place, going in 2 different directions. Are there any plans to widen the road, which I hope not, or are there turn lanes that are being addressed to get traffic out? There's also a question that was asked to me, and I'll have to defer it to you. There is another access point besides the main Bleckley Road that housing development could exit off of, which was the old Bleckley Road. And would that be an option to be used for this development? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Talked about the creek that ran through there, through all of our properties, and that's running through where these properties will be built. And I know that there was discussion to reroute some of that drainage from the creek that used to be there, but it still runs behind our properties, and I'm wondering how that will connect or affect our properties. And I even have a sinkhole in my back where the construction has sunk in, and it, you know, down to the old pipes in the bottom. Yeah, I'm sure there's a bottom down there somewhere, but I haven't found it. But I asked about having that fixed, but I was told it couldn't be fixed. So if you could address that too, I would appreciate it.
Mayor Pro Tem, if it's the pleasure of council, the staff heard the numerous concerns that were just addressed, and we would like to take this information and study it and take a look at it, and also get back with her.
Ms. Lloyd.
He came in right at the end of my list. Thank you.
Did you finish your list, Ms.
I
Lloyd?
really did. I think I was at the end of it. Anything
If you
that,
have something else, we'll be glad to hear it.
no, thank you. Those were the most important, unless Betty, did you have anything else? Okay, just appreciate your time and your consideration. How you doing?
Thank you.
Well, our staff has made note of all your concerns, and I'm sure that our planning staff and our administrative team will get back with you on those concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know the applicant is here. Is there anybody else who'd like to have any comments before we ask the applicant to come up? And I think the applicant is here. Would you like to come up and say anything?
Bob Barretto, Greenville, South Carolina, 100 Hudson Street.
Could you speak up just a little bit? We can't hear you.
How's that?
That's better.
That's better, yeah.
Yeah, we've increased the buffering. I think some of that is circulated around, and I think you're satisfied at this point with the buffering and the fence and all the rest of it at this point. So I don't know what else we can address at this right now. You know, as far as parking, we can write a lot of the things into the HOA about commercial vehicles and parking on the street, and it'll just have to be policed by the HOA once they're established. So, I don't know if there are any other loose ends at this point.
Does anybody have any questions of the applicant? No, go ahead. Okay, anybody?
I'd like to, I've always been concerned about the density of this project and a number of the issues that ma'am spoke about just a minute ago, but the minimum lot size has always bothered me, just the 5,000 square foot lots.
Mhm.
And not only that, the setbacks are a problem as well. When you put these lots so close together, narrow lots, then drainage issues become magnified. If you have drainage that has to come between those lots, between houses with 6-foot setbacks, it becomes very difficult to manage and correct. The setbacks or the buffer yards off of the both Bleckley and Glenwood, some of these lots are literally right up onto the right-of-way. And if someone wanted to put, let's just say, a storage building, you know where it's going to go. It's going to go right on the back lot line. And those back lot lines are right at the roads. So I don't think there's enough buffering the way it's presented. I'm not opposed to the rezoning. Matter of fact, I think it's the right call. But as it's presented, I wouldn't be in favor. Not how it's presented.
Okay. Do you want to do
Council,
the drainage issues?
hold on a second.
Wesley White. I live here in Anderson, South Carolina. I'm with Ridgewater Engineering. We're also here in Anderson as well. As far as the traffic concerns, drainage concerns, things like that, those are things that unfortunately we've dealt with as far as just preliminarily. The actual design of that will obviously all be worked out with the city, and we'll have to get approval through the city and through all their agencies before any of that's done, including water and sewer, the storm drainage as well. Most of those issues with the outbuildings and things like that, I think Bob had mentioned, those will all be written into the covenants, and I think most of us are familiar with the covenants and restrictions that go in, and outbuildings, all that stuff has to be approved through the HOA. So those concerns, hopefully, like I said, will be addressed during that time. As far as the buffer off of the streets and things like that, those are limited a little bit by what the DOT will allow and for sight distance, but also there should be adequate space there to get proper growth on all those trees back there as well. So we feel good about that.
Councilman Chapman?
So, so some of the same concerns that I have as Councilman Roberts, but one of the other concerns too is that the subdivision across the street, when it was developed as a PDD, and I remember many years ago when that happened, right after we came on council, there were some issues with when they started developing it. The setbacks were on the front setbacks, I think were 15 or something very similar to this. But what happens now, and I drove by there today, is you end up having, if you get one car in there, that one car is beyond the setback or the property limit. It gets into the buffer. And then in one case, there was 2 cars back in there, and the second car was out in the rear end of it was beyond the curb. And so at minimum, if you have a 15-foot setback in front of a garage, you end up, and the car comes in to park there, it's going to park 3 to 4 feet generally, or maybe 2 feet from the front of the garage door, so you can get by. But then that pushes it even further back. So, I would recommend that the front setback be increased. But I do have the concern, especially in the hard curve, the major curve of the Bleckley Street. Maybe not so much on Glenwood, but definitely on Bleckley, is that an ancillary structure is gonna go all the way to the very back of the property because it's not required for setbacks and things like that. So that would be my two main concerns. That and obviously the density will probably change when you create those buffers. So I'd like to see it more, and I think when we talked about it on council, that we were gonna make 6,000 the limit, the minimum limit of some of the lots that we would do after that one was already passed.
We haven't done that, though.
No, not on this one.
No.
That's right. Councilman Lockwood.
I have a concern, and I've mentioned this to Mr. Barreto about my concern about the plot itself opening up onto Glenwood, directly across from the other opening, and actually with the density of the plot in that other development and then the density of the plot in this development and opening up at the same time, it about to goes to work at 8 o'clock. We've got a problem there. I mentioned to Mr. Barreto when I talked with him about the possibility of having an opening or a drive opening on Blakely versus having a drive opening on Glenwood, which would reduce the traffic on Glenwood immeasurably and help the possibility of this being less of a traffic problem. This was not even mentioned at the planning commission meeting because I watched it, but it was something that concerned me when I talked to him. It's something that with the amount of folks that we've got coming in there. If you have everybody coming out at the same spot, that just does not seem like a good idea. And, you know, I'm not against the project, I'm just against everybody having to fight to get out into the traffic. And that is one of the problems that I see with this.
Any other questions?
Follow up on
Councilman Roberts.
What would be the possibility of a second entrance? Not just one, but two, one on Glenwood, one on Black?
Yeah, that's what I was going to address. Blackley is, and Glenwood are both state maintained roads, so they control the access. They're going to require us come out across if we come out on Glenwood across from the other entrance, that's their standard. We don't have enough room to stay away from the intersection of Glenwood and Blackley and the entrance across from us. So they're gonna require us any access on Glenwood come out from there. Any access on Blackley would be limited in the fact that Blackley's a divided highway or a divided road with a grass median, and being as close to Blackley as we already are, with also the other entrance. I don't know that we haven't discussed it with the DOT, but they would, I don't know if they'd allow a center turn or a median to be installed, an island to be installed or not. In the past, when we've approached about things like that, obviously it's on the developer to do, but they usually frown on it, on access roads like that, because it's a double lane, and the grass median's excuse me, already there. Access across onto what was the old Blackley, we've looked into that. Unfortunately, with the existing creek that's there, there's also a sewer coming through there that splits in several different directions. There's going to be some environmental issues with crossing the creek and stuff that could be an issue, as well as we're limited on how much property we actually have on that portion. And again, how we'd be coming out pretty close to the access to where that road currently ties into Blackley. So there's going to be some concerns. We can look into that, but I think there's, through the planning process, we can evaluate that with the engineering department and staff.
I think that would solve at least two of the problems just immediately if you could provide that second.
Right, yeah, it'd be something we'd have to get the DOT involved with on a second entrance out there.
Have you checked with the DOT yet to find out whether or not they would allow something like that?
We have not, no.
Is that the old Blackburn? Is that when you're looking at the northwest corner? Is that what that is? I see an old road bed.
Yeah, it's not quite shown on the site map, and yeah, I think up here on the sketch.
Personally, even if it was an exit only scenario, whenever you're still alleviating back from Glenwood, so, yeah, I think I'd appreciate seeing an opinion on that as well. Because we're talking about high density here, and I think that's a concern for everyone, is just the amount and how much is going in on 16 acres and almost 17 acres. And,
Right.
you know, so I think the more information we can get back will be good for us.
Councilman Locker. With these questions that have come up with Councilman, I would like to see this tabled until we can find out some answers.
Would we want to have it tabled, you know, because I think table takes, 2/3 table, we just ask to continue it for, until we get the other information to come back to us.
Have you want to word? Postpone, I think, is the best word. Postpone, then we can postpone.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to ask one other question. Maurice, how many homes are proposed across the street? What is the proposed
100.
density?
86.
86.
Yes, it's a little larger. You said 17 acres? Yeah, 17 acres, so it's roughly the same size, but it's a few more houses.
Okay, I'm just trying to, with the two opposing entrances, that in the morning, I think that would be, the morning is gonna be the most difficult with school and going to work.
Well, again, I'm not against the project, but there are some problems with some of the things that deal with this project that I just feel like that we need to postpone it till we can find out some questions or answers.
Councilman Harvin.
Mr. McKenzie, what does, sorry you sat down, I was trying to catch you. The plan that we have here, where does it not meet the stipulations that we currently have?
In terms of,
The drawing that we have? It meets all of our rules?
for R5, the minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet. The smallest lots in here are 5,000 square feet. There are some that are larger. So from a lot size standard, it does meet those guidelines.
So so we're talking, and, what did and Councilman Chapman spoke about the development across the street, and whenever it was, proposed and passed, didn't we do more of a buffer?
We did.
Something like that?
Yeah, and with that is PDD Plan Development District, and with that, I always describe it as you create your own zoning for that particular piece of property. So with the PDD, you write in different things. You can be specific with landscaping, screening, buffering. You can be specific with parking. You can be specific with a lot of different things. So with PDD, it's just more descriptive than traditional zoning like R5, R10, R15, R20.
Okay, but they've sort of come back with this, just looking at more buffering, trees and different things. I mean, I think it's something that we need to try to figure out, what's gonna be best for the city. And, I mean, that's obviously, this piece of property for houses is a perfect fit. Just how can we, work it out and make it profitable for the investors that we appreciate you coming over. We weren't sure that the interstate ran from Greenville to Anderson. Obviously it does. We appreciate you coming over and would like to try to figure out a way to make it happen. That's gonna be best for the neighbors and for everybody.
Well, I think, I've heard that, we've got a motion to postpone it, but I think our assistant city manager want to kind of give us with some direction how we're going to lead from here, so I'll turn it over to you.
Well, let me just clarify really quickly too. Because this is a rezoning, they are asking to change the zoning, the existing zoning of the property. You do, as a council, have the ability to attach conditions to the rezoning request. If there are some conditions that would address some of these issues that you've outlined here tonight, those can be attached to any approval. It sounds like that might be a good way to go. Now, I would say, instead of coming up with those on the fly tonight, give us a chance as staff to sit down with the developer and see if we can work out some of these issues ahead of time before we bring it back to y'all for consideration.
Let me ask this, as always with a rezoning, and I'll leave this up to my fellow council members, we don't like to hold, developers up, and it always takes two readings, to pass anything. Would it be something that we would want to at least pass on first reading? And while we came back, and then if it comes back and we don't like what we see, we don't necessarily have to pass it, on the second reading, and, that way at least it keeps the ball moving for our developer out there, so, but I'll leave that up for discussion.
I would like to see more information before I would be in favor.
All right.
I'd like a second postponement.
We have a first by Councilman Lockridge to postpone the meeting, and got a second by Councilwoman Dr. Thompson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes, postponed, and so I would just ask that you get with our staff and work out the concerns that they have and bring it back to us at the appropriate time. While we're still on that, and I think Councilman Chapman made a real good, jog my memory, because I had totally forgot about it. When we did do that previous subdivision, we talked about increasing the lot sizes from 5,000 to 6,000 square feet and doing the setbacks, and I guess from that to here, it never took place, so I like to kind of see our staff kind of give some direction, go back and revisit that so that we can look at making those changes that we had talked about previously. I guess it got dropped by the wayside.
Yep, that's a good idea.
Certainly will. Certainly will.
All right, moving on to the, that's the only item we had in old business. We've got one item of new business. We've got request consideration of a police department application for the Justice Assistance Grant, which is called JAG, program regarding the street level crime apprehension program. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This is great news. We have been awarded a grant from the Justice Department, and without getting out into me spoiling all the details, I'll let Chief Jim Stewart present this item. Chief?
Yes, sir. This is the same grant that you're familiar with. We've had this since 1997. The grant name that we're applying for under this and been awarded the $18,122 is the Street Level Criminal Apprehension Program. This is the money that we use for overtime to proactively enforce criminal law and traffic and within the city. We particularly use this program in our parks, playground, the play areas. You'll see the officers out extra duty. We supplement it for traffic checkpoints and also supplement it when we have shift shortages in patrol.
Just, have any questions by any council members before I have anything? Just curious, it's kind of like, they give us the money, then they want us to apply, for the grant, because I think, if I'm reading here, it says the city has been included on the allocation list to apply for the grant. So, but we've already applied and got funded for it, haven't we?
Yes, yes, sir. This is just really a public notice and a public hearing that's required by the grant.
I have a question, just curious. How do you generally fund overtime when you need to have overtime?
We have actual built-in overtime within budget and patrol, and you also have another pocket for court overtime, two separate accounts.
Just eliminate that.
This is just extra money that assists us with a more proactive enforcement.
Councilmember Harvey.
Chief, do we have a grant writer? I think we do in the police department. That I know in the past there seemed to be a lot more funds available. I think there was it Kelly who used to
Say the name.
Kelly who used to bring. She was the grant writer for the police department at one time.
Yes.
And are there still funds out there for grants, or is that sort of compressed through the years?
Sarah Young is our current grant writer, and the most successful grants right now for law enforcement are body cameras, which we have been awarded those within the last 2 years. And we use that money to replace our first edition of body cameras with the current ones that we carry now. That is like at the top of the list right now.
Okay. We appreciate the grants that she's able to get.
Yes.
That being said, I have a motion that we approve this allocation for the JAG program. Got a first by Councilmember Harvin, second by Councilmember Lockridge. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is administrative briefing, Mr. City Manager.
Council, I'll be quick, but tomorrow night, Tuesday the 13th, Councilmember Lawfridge is having seat sits neighborhood watch meeting at 6:30 p.m. It is. I kind of ran together. 6:30 p.m. at the Recreation Center, and you have several speakers lined up from the city.
One of the speakers will be Mr. Beretta, who is the director, who's going to be doing this housing development, and he's there to answer questions from the community. And that would be a good opportunity for the community to be able to find out some answers to the question.
All right, good opportunity for the neighbors to come out and see what's going on, and also we got some good guests from the city.
We have
speaking as
other
well.
folks there as well. We have our chief of police will be there, as well as our several other members of our staff. So we're excited to have a really good meeting and lots of folks there.
We have on the Thursday the 15th, we continue the block party series. I encourage the public and everybody watching Electric City TV continue coming out for that, for a great Thursday night in downtown Anderson each Thursday, running through the summer. On Saturday, and Mr. Stewart, you may want to elaborate on that. I know you have in the Greeley Park Back to School Bash.
Yeah, this Saturday from 1:30 to 4:30, to 5:30. It's the 15th annual Back to School Bash in the Greeley Park. We'll be giving away about 150 book bags filled with school supplies to the children in the community. The police will be there doing Kids ID. We'll have our fire department there with the smokehouse. I think Beth Batson is going to be there with this new art project that they're working on with the kids in the community, as well as a lot of free food from Creekside Barbecue and Skins Hot Dogs. So if you can make it, I'd be glad to see you out there.
A busy time getting started back to school. A great event there. Councilman Chapman is having the C2 neighborhood watch meeting at 6 p.m. at Fire Station 3 on Tuesday the 20th. And our next council meeting is scheduled for August the 26th at 6 p.m. in the council chambers. And that's all I have for you tonight.
Before we adjourn, I see that we've got a scout here in the audience. If you don't mind, just could you stand up and give us your name and tell us what troop you're from and what badge you're working on?
I am James Buckwalter. I am in Troop 215, and I'm working on I want to say citizenship in the community merit badge.
Yep.
We're glad to have you here tonight.
We surely are. Thanks.
Thank you. With that being said, if there's no further business, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn. So moved. So moved. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Good job. Good job, Mayor.
You did a good job.